I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who'd lose everything while gaining the world. But there I was, 63 years old, standing in a boardroom overlooking Marina Bay, about to close a $15 million deal that would secure my company's future for the next decade. And all I could think about was whether my son remembered to water the roses by the lake house dock. That's the thing about being a mother. You can be negotiating with billionaires, and part of your mind is still back home, worrying about the small things. The things that shouldn't matter when you're about to sign paperwork that'll change lives. But they do matter. They always do. If you've ever built something from nothing, you know exactly what I mean. Comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I'd love to know I'm not alone in this. And if you're just finding this channel, check the description box for more stories like mine. Sometimes sharing our pain is the only way through it. My name is Catherine Brennan. And for 37 years, I built Brennan Consulting from a spare bedroom operation into a multinational firm. I did it without a husband. He left when our son Tyler was 6, said he couldn't handle being married to someone more ambitious than him. I did it without family money, without connections, without anything except a stubborn refusal to fail. The lake house in northern Michigan wasn't just property. It was proof. Proof that the girl who grew up in a trailer park in Indiana could own something beautiful. Something permanent. I bought it the year Tyler graduated high school. He was 17, cocky, already talking about business school like it was a foregone conclusion. I remember taking him there for the first time, watching his face as we pulled up the long gravel drive, the way his eyes widened when he saw the water stretching out behind the house, endless and silver in the afternoon light. "This is ours?" he'd asked. "This is ours," I'd confirmed. "This is what happens when you don't give up." For 15 years, that house was our sanctuary. Every summer, we'd spend 2 weeks there. No phones, no emails, just us and the lake and the sound of loons calling across the water at dawn. I taught him to fish from the dock. We painted the shutters together, arguing about whether to go with forest green or navy blue. We sat on the screened porch during thunderstorms, watching lightning crack the sky open. I thought I was teaching him about perseverance. About building something that lasts. I thought he understood. The Singapore deal had been 18 months in the making. 18 months of video calls at 3 in the morning, of flying back and forth across the Pacific until I couldn't remember what time zone I was in, of negotiating with men who thought a woman my age should be retired, not expanding. But I'd done it. I'd outmaneuvered every single one of them, and now I was 48 hours from signing contracts that would establish Brennan Consulting's first Asian headquarters. Tyler knew about the deal. Of course he knew. He'd been texting me updates about the wedding planning, about his fiancée Sophie's latest ideas for the ceremony, about how excited they were for the bachelor party he was planning. Some resort in the Caribbean, he'd said. Nothing too crazy. I'd wired him $20,000 3 months earlier as my contribution to the wedding. It seemed generous. It seemed like enough. I should have known better. The morning of the signing, I woke up at 4 a.m. in my hotel room, my phone buzzing with messages. 17 texts. 9 missed calls. My first thought was that something had happened to Tyler. My heart was in my throat as I unlocked the screen, hands shaking, already imagining the worst. But it wasn't an accident. It wasn't an emergency. It was Margaret, my neighbor back home, the retired schoolteacher who lived 3 houses down from the lake house and checked on it when I traveled. "Catherine, I don't know how to tell you this, but there are people at your house. A moving company. They're loading everything into trucks. I tried to stop them, but they have paperwork. They said Tyler authorized it. Please call me." I read the message 3 times before the words made sense. Moving company. Tyler authorized it. My hands went numb. I called her back immediately, not caring that it was the middle of the night in Michigan. "Margaret, what's happening?" Her voice was strained, apologetic. "I didn't want to bother you, I know you're doing something important over there, but Catherine, they're taking everything. The furniture, the paintings, even the boat." I talked to the foreman and he showed me the sale documents. The house sold 4 days ago. Tyler's name is on everything. The room tilted. "That's impossible. I didn't sell the house." "But it's in his name too, isn't it? From the estate planning you did." And there it was. The mistake I'd made 5 years earlier, when my lawyer convinced me to add Tyler as a co-owner for tax purposes. If anything happens to you, it'll make the inheritance process smoother, he'd said. Avoid probate, save on estate taxes. I trusted my son. Why wouldn't I? He was my only child. My legacy. Margaret, I need you to tell them to stop. Tell them there's been a mistake. I tried, honey. They won't listen to me. They have legal paperwork. A deed transfer, signed by Tyler. The new owners are supposed to take possession tomorrow. My throat closed up. New owners. I'm so sorry, Catherine. I hung up and immediately called Tyler. It went straight to voicemail. I called again, and again, and again. On the 7th try, he finally picked up. Mom, hey, can this wait? We're kind of in the middle of something. Background noise. Music. Laughter. The sound of waves. Tyler, what did you do? A pause. Then, casual as anything, oh, you heard about the house. Yeah, I was going to tell you when you got back. Sophie and I needed some cash for the wedding stuff, and you know, the real estate market's been crazy. I got a great offer, and we closed fast. Don't worry, you'll still get your cut. My cut. My cut of my own house. Tyler, you sold my house without asking me? Our house, technically. And yeah, Mom, I made an executive decision. You're always telling me to be proactive, right? To see opportunities? Well, I saw one. Besides, you're never there anymore. You're always working. What's the point of keeping a vacation house you don't use? Something inside me went very, very quiet. How much did you get? $420,000. Not bad, right? I already used $300 for the island rental. We got this insane private island in the Maldives for 2 weeks. The whole wedding party's going. It's going to be legendary. $300,000. For a party. I couldn't breathe. Tyler, that house was worth at least $700,000. Well, the market's weird right now. I took the best offer we got. And honestly, Mom, it's not like you need the money. You're closing some huge deal, right? This is for my wedding. For your grandkids someday. I thought you'd be happy. If you've ever had someone you love betray you while acting like they're doing you a favor, you'll understand what happened next. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just felt something fundamental break inside my chest. Where are you right now? We're already here, actually. At the island. Sophie wanted to get here early to set everything up. It's incredible, Mom. You should see this place. He'd already spent the money. He was already living in the paradise he'd bought with my home. I'm coming back, I said quietly. What? No, don't cut your trip short. Enjoy Singapore. We'll catch up when you're home. I'm coming back, I repeated, and hung up. I didn't close the deal that day. I sent my second-in-command to do it, something I'd never done before in my entire career. And I booked the next flight back to the States, sitting in that business class seat for 18 hours, staring at nothing, thinking about every sacrifice I'd made, every hour I'd worked, every piece of myself I'd given to build a life my son could be proud of. And he'd sold it for a party. The flight back felt like moving through water. Everything was slow, muted, surreal. I kept checking my phone, reading Tyler's messages over and over, looking for something I'd missed. Some sign of remorse. Some acknowledgement that what he'd done was wrong. There was nothing. Just updates about the island. Photos of Sophie in a bikini on white sand beaches. Videos of his friends doing shots on a yacht. Living the dream, one caption read. My dream. He was living my dream. The one I'd built with my own hands. When I landed in Detroit, I drove straight to the lake house. I don't know what I expected. Maybe some part of me thought Margaret had been wrong, that it was all a misunderstanding. But pulling up that gravel driveway and seeing the sold sign staked in the front yard made it real in a way nothing else had. The house was empty. Not just empty of furniture, empty of us. The walls where our photos had hung showed lighter squares of paint. The kitchen where we'd made pancakes every Sunday morning was stripped bare. Even the porch swing was gone. I sat on the dock where I'd taught Tyler to fish, and I finally let myself cry. Not pretty crying. The kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep and primal, where you can't catch your breath and your whole body shakes. I cried for the girl I'd been, working 3 jobs to put myself through community college. I cried for the young mother I'd been, lying awake at night terrified I couldn't provide for my son. I cried for every sacrifice, every missed birthday party, every moment I'd chosen work over rest because I thought I was building something permanent. And then I stopped crying. Because something else took over. Something cold and clear and absolutely certain. I wasn't going to let this destroy me. I was going to make sure Tyler understood exactly what he'd done. And more than that, I was going to make sure he felt it. Margaret found me there an hour later. She brought coffee in a thermos and sat beside me without saying anything for a long time. That's what I've always loved about Margaret. She knows when silence is the kindest thing you can offer. "What are you going to do?" she finally asked. "I don't know yet," I said. But that was a lie. I already knew. I just wasn't ready to say it out loud. I drove to my condo in Detroit that night, the place I'd bought as a home base, though I was rarely there. It felt sterile, impersonal. None of my memories lived in those walls. I'd always thought of the lake house as home. Now I didn't have one. I spent 3 days not answering Tyler's calls. He left voicemails, breezy at first, then confused, then annoyed. "Mom, why are you being weird about this? Call me back." As if I was the problem. As if I was being unreasonable. On the 4th day, I got a different call. My lawyer, David Hoffman, who'd handled my business affairs for 20 years. "Catherine, I heard about the house. I'm so sorry. If I'd known Tyler was planning to exercise his co-ownership rights." "It's not your fault, David." "Still. There are legal avenues we could explore. The sale was legitimate under the co-ownership agreement, but if you wanted to challenge his right to sell without consulting you, how much would that cost? Time or money?" "Both." A long pause. "Realistically? A year of litigation, maybe 2. Legal fees could run 60, 70,000. And there's no guarantee you'd win. The deed was clear. He had the right to sell." I thanked him and hung up. Suing my own son. The thought made me sick. And even if I won, what would I win? The house was already sold. The money was already spent. I couldn't get back what mattered. But I could make him understand what he'd taken. If you've ever felt powerless, you know how seductive revenge becomes. It's not about anger, not entirely. It's about reclaiming some sense of control when everything has been stolen from you. Check the description below for more stories about people who refused to stay victims. Sometimes we need to know we're not alone in the darker moments. I started making calls. Quiet calls. To Tyler's bank, where I'd been a co-signer on his accounts since he was 18. Something I'd never removed, an oversight he'd probably forgotten about. To the credit cards I'd helped him open to build his credit. To the trust fund I'd established for his wedding, separate from the cash gift I'd already given him. I learned interesting things in those calls. The bachelor party hadn't cost $300,000. It had cost $90,000. Tyler had pocketed the rest, or rather, he'd used it to make investments. Crypto, according to his transaction history. Day trading. Get-rich-quick schemes that made my professional blood run cold. My son, who'd grown up watching me build a legitimate empire through hard work and strategy, had sold our home to gamble. I also learned something else. Sophie, his fiancée, didn't know about any of it. The wedding coordinator I'd spoken to 6 months earlier confirmed that Sophie thought Tyler's family, meaning me, was paying for the entire wedding. She had no idea Tyler had liquidated an asset to fund his bachelor party. She had no idea about the gambling. That's when the plan crystallized. I called Tyler on the 7th day. He answered on the first ring, relief flooding his voice. "Mom, finally. I was starting to worry. Are you okay?" "I'm fine. I've just been busy with work. The Singapore deal closed successfully." "That's great. See, I told you everything would work out. Hey, so I've been thinking. Sophie and I want you to see the island before we leave. Maybe you could fly out for a few days? It would mean a lot to her. To us. Sophie. He was using Sophie now, leveraging my affection for the girl I'd thought would become my daughter-in-law. The girl who'd seemed sweet and genuine when they'd started dating 3 years ago. The girl who'd called me Mama Catherine and sent me handwritten thank you notes. Actually, Tyler, I was thinking I'd wait to see you both when you get back. When are you coming home? Week after next. The wedding's in 6 weeks. Can you believe it? Sophie's freaking out about the final details, but it's all coming together. I'm sure it is. Listen, I need to handle some things with my accounts, make sure everything's organized for the wedding gift I'm planning. Can you send me Sophie's parents' contact information? I'd like to coordinate with them. Sure. But Mom, you already gave us $20,000. You don't have to do more. Tyler, you're my only child. Of course I'm doing more. I could hear his smile through the phone. You're the best. I'll text you their info. He had no idea. No idea at all. The next 2 weeks, I worked. Not on my company. I let my team handle that. I worked on research. On documentation. On building an airtight case for what I was about to do. I discovered that Sophie's parents, Robert and Linda Pearson, were lovely people. Middle class, hardworking. Robert was a high school guidance counselor. Linda managed a dental office. They'd saved for years to contribute their portion to the wedding, $15,000, which they'd given to Sophie and Tyler 6 months ago. I also discovered that Sophie had recently confided in her mother that she was worried about Tyler's spending habits. That he'd become secretive about money. That he'd promised her they'd buy a house after the wedding, but she didn't know where the down payment would come from. She didn't know he'd already spent it. I made one more call. To the wedding venue. Tyler had booked it using a deposit from the money I'd originally given them, but the final payment, $30,000, was due in 3 weeks. I had the venue coordinator send me the payment schedule. Then I did something I'd never thought I'd do. I called my bank and froze the trust fund I'd established for Tyler's wedding. The one that held $85,000, specifically designated for his marriage expenses. The one I'd spent a decade building, adding to it every year on his birthday. Legally, I could do it. I'd set it up with myself as the sole trustee. Tyler had no access without my authorization. Without that money, Tyler couldn't make the final venue payment. Couldn't pay the caterer. Couldn't cover the florist, the photographer, any of the vendors requiring final payments. The wedding, scheduled for 6 weeks from now, would collapse. But I wasn't done. Not even close. I flew to Michigan the day before Tyler and Sophie were due back from the Maldives. I'd arranged to meet them at Tyler's apartment, a place I'd helped him buy, co-signing on the mortgage when his credit wasn't quite good enough on its own. Another thread I could pull if I wanted to. Tyler's apartment was in a new development in Ann Arbor, all glass and steel and the kind of modern luxury that feels expensive but soulless. I'd been there before, but never like this. Never as an adversary. I let myself in with the key he'd given me years ago. The place was a mess, evidence of their rushed packing before the island trip. Mail piled on the counter. Dishes in the sink. But what caught my attention was the paperwork spread across the dining room table. Credit card statements. Investment portfolios. And a letter from the mortgage company about a missed payment. I sat down and read through everything. Each document was another crack in the facade Tyler had built. The crypto investments had tanked. He'd lost $40,000 in 3 weeks. The day trading was even worse. He'd opened margin accounts, borrowing money to invest, and now he owed nearly $70,000 he didn't have. My son, the financial genius, had gambled away everything and then some. The apartment door opened behind me. I didn't turn around. Mom. Tyler's voice was uncertain. I heard Sophie's sharper intake of breath, her whispered, "Oh my God, is that your mom?" I finally looked at them. Tyler was tan, relaxed, wearing an expensive resort shirt I'd never seen before. Sophie was beside him, her hair lightened by sun and salt water, looking every bit the Instagram influencer she aspired to be. "Welcome home," I said quietly. Tyler dropped his bags. What are you doing here? I used my key. I hope that's okay. We need to talk. Sophie glanced between us, sensing the tension. I should probably stay, I said. It wasn't a request. This involves you too. For the first time, I saw something flash across Sophie's face. Calculation. Like she was assessing a threat. Tyler moved into the kitchen, putting the island between us. A barrier. Mom, if this is about the house again, I really don't want to rehash it. What's done is done. You're right, I said. What's done is done. I can't get the lake house back. But I can make sure you understand what it meant. Jesus, Mom, it was just a house. Just a house. 3 words that proved he'd understood nothing. Nothing at all. Tell me something, Tyler. Does Sophie know where the money for the island really came from? His face went carefully blank. Sophie's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? Tyler said it was from some investments that paid off. Is that what he told you? I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and turned the screen toward them. These are Tyler's transaction records. I'm still a co-signer on his accounts, something we set up when he was in college that was never updated. The island rental was $90,000. Not $300. He sold our lake house for $420,000, pocketed the difference, and lost most of it gambling on cryptocurrency and day trades. Sophie's face drained of color. That's not Tyler. Mom, you had no right to look at my accounts. I had every right. My name is on them. And I think Sophie has a right to know what you did with her future. Your future together. This is insane. You're being vindictive because you're mad about the house. No, I said, standing up. I'm being honest because you sold my home and lied about it. I'm being honest because you're about to marry this woman and she deserves to know who she's marrying. Sophie was looking at Tyler now, really looking at him, and I could see the wheels turning. The house your mom always talked about? The lake house where you spent every summer? You sold that. It was legally mine too, Tyler said defensively. And we needed the money. You needed $300,000 for a bachelor party? No, I needed capital for investments. I was trying to grow our wealth. I was trying to. You were trying to get rich quick, I interrupted. Instead of doing the work. Instead of building something real. Tyler's face flushed red. That's rich coming from you. You're never around. You chose work over me my entire childhood. You missed soccer games, school plays, graduation parties. And now you want to lecture me about what matters. There it was. The resentment I'd pretended not to see for years. You're right, I said quietly. I did choose work. I chose it because I didn't have a choice. I chose it because your father left and someone had to keep the lights on. I chose it because I wanted you to have opportunities one never had. And yes, I missed things. I missed a lot of things. But Tyler, I was building you a foundation. I was showing you what's possible when you don't give up. And you took that foundation and gambled it away. I was trying to make you proud, he said, and for just a moment he sounded young. Lost. Then you should have asked me. You should have talked to me. You should have trusted that I would help you instead of stealing from me. I didn't steal. You sold my home without permission. The words came out louder than I'd intended, echoing in the apartment. You took the one place that meant something to me and you liquidated it like it was stock portfolio. You didn't even get a fair price. You undersold it by $300,000 because you were in a hurry to fund your party. Sophie was crying now, silent tears running down her perfect face. I didn't know, she whispered. I swear, Catherine, I didn't know. I believed her. That was the worst part. I believed her. There's more, I said, sitting back down. Tyler, you've missed a mortgage payment on this apartment. You owe $70,000 on margin calls from your day trading. And unless I'm mistaken, you don't have the money to make the final payments on your wedding. We have the trust fund, Tyler said quickly. The one you set up. Had, I corrected. Past tense. I froze it yesterday. The silence that followed was absolute. You what? I froze the trust fund. I'm the sole trustee. Tyler, that money was intended for your wedding and your future. But given your recent financial decisions, I don't trust you with it. Not yet. Sophie's voice was strangled. The venue payment is due in 3 weeks. I know. Catherine, please. She moved toward me, hands clasped like she was praying. Please don't do this. It's our wedding. My parents have already sent invitations. 200 people are coming. We can't cancel. Looking at her then, I felt something twist in my chest. She was a victim in this too. But I'd come too far to stop now. I'm not canceling anything, I said. Tyler is. Mom, don't do this. Give me one reason why I shouldn't. Because I'm your son. Exactly. You're my son. And you treated me like an ATM. You sold my home, lied about it, and expected me to just accept it because family is supposed to forgive everything. I stood up, picking up my purse. Here's what's going to happen. Tyler, you're going to figure out how to pay for your own wedding. Liquidate whatever investments you have left. Get a loan. Sell something of yours for once. I don't care. But you're not using my money. You're being cruel, Sophie said, and there was venom in her voice now. Real anger replacing the tears. No, I'm being consistent. I taught Tyler that actions have consequences. I'm just enforcing the lesson. I walked toward the door, and that's when Sophie said it. The thing that would make everything that came next feel justified. I suppose you'll need our guest room now. I stopped. Turned back. Excuse me. She lifted her chin, and I saw it then, the calculation I'd glimpsed earlier, now fully formed. Well, you don't have your precious lake house anymore. And from what Tyler's told me, you're barely ever at your condo. So I suppose when you need somewhere to stay, you'll be asking us. Ironic, isn't it? You spent all that time building an empire, and now your son has to take care of you. The smile on her face was small, mean, triumphant. This was the moment everything changed. The moment the thumbnail of my story crystallized into something real and terrible and absolutely perfect. I walked back toward her slowly. Tyler moved like he might step between us, but something in my face stopped him. I got close enough that only Sophie could hear me clearly. And I whispered 6 words. 6 words that took everything I knew about my son's finances, about Sophie's insecurities, about the house of cards they'd built together, and collapsed it all. Tyler's broke, and so are you. Sophie's face went from triumphant to confused to horrified in the space of a heartbeat. What are you talking about? The mortgage Tyler co-signed? It's in his name. When he defaults, and he will, probably within 3 months given his debt load, it'll tank his credit. Your credit too, once you're married. The trust fund he promised you? Frozen. The investments he said would pay for your future? Gone. You're about to marry a man who has negative net worth, and the only reason you haven't figured that out yet is because you've been too busy planning a wedding you can't afford. I straightened up, speaking at normal volume now. Tyler didn't just sell my house. He sold your future together. Every plan you made, every dream you had, he gambled it away. And now you're standing here sneering at me, acting like I'm the villain, when I'm the only one in this room who built something real. Sophie looked at Tyler. Tell her she's wrong. He couldn't. We both watched him try to find words and fail. Catherine, Sophie's voice broke. Save it, I said. You want to know what's ironic? I actually liked you. I thought you were good for him. But that comment about the guest room? That told me everything I need to know. You're not worried about Tyler. You're not worried about your relationship. You're worried about your lifestyle. About what you'll look like on Instagram when you can't afford the influencer aesthetic anymore. I opened the door, and this time I walked through it. Mom, wait. Tyler followed me into the hallway. We can fix this. Just unfreeze the trust. Give us a chance. I turned back one last time. Tyler, I gave you chances your whole life. I gave you opportunities, education, support, love. And you took my home. So no. Figure it out yourself. That's what I had to do. I hate you, he said. I know, I replied. But someday, when you've built something real, when you've earned something instead of taking it, you'll understand. And maybe then we can talk. I left him standing there, and I didn't look back. The wedding didn't happen. Not the one they'd planned anyway. 2 weeks after our confrontation, Tyler called me. Not to apologize, not yet. But to tell me he'd gotten a loan from Sophie's parents to cover the venue payment. They'd downgraded the caterer, cut the guest list in half, cancelled the photographer they'd wanted and hired a cheaper one. Sophie was doing her own flowers. We're making it work, he said, and I heard the exhaustion in his voice. Maybe even the first hints of humility. Good, I said. You're not coming, are you? I'd gotten the invitation 3 months earlier, back when I thought I'd be standing beside my son on his wedding day, proud and happy. Back when the lake house still existed. No, I said. I'm not. Sophie says she understands. She says she's sorry. About what she said. Is she? Or is she sorry she miscalculated? A long pause. I don't know, Mom. I don't know anything anymore. That's when I heard it, the crack in his voice that told me he was finally starting to understand. Tyler, do you know why I worked so much when you were growing up? Because you had to. Because Dad left. Partly. But also because I was terrified. Terrified that if I slowed down even for a second, we'd lose everything. Every soccer game I missed, every school play, every moment I chose work over you, it wasn't because I didn't love you. It was because I loved you so much that the thought of not being able to provide for you kept me awake at night. I know that now. Do you? Because you sold the one thing that represented all of that work. All of that fear. All of those sacrifices. And you did it without even asking me. I thought I was being smart. I thought I was making a bold move, like you always did. Tyler, I never made bold moves. I made calculated ones. I did my research. I took measured risks. What you did wasn't bold, it was reckless. And there's a difference. I heard him breathing on the other end of the line, and I wondered if he was crying. Can you ever forgive me? He finally asked. I don't know, I said honestly. Ask me in a year. Ask me after you've spent some time building instead of taking. The trust fund stays frozen. Not as punishment, Tyler. As protection. When you've proven you can manage money responsibly, when you've worked your way out of this debt, when you've shown me you've learned something from this disaster, then we'll talk about the trust fund. That's not fair. Life isn't fair. I learned that lesson young. You're learning it now. We hung up without saying goodbye. The wedding happened on a rainy Saturday in September. I know because Margaret went. She sent me photos. Tyler in his tuxedo, looking older than I remembered. Sophie in a simple dress, pretty but not the elaborate gown she'd originally chosen. They looked happy in the photos. Or maybe they just looked relieved that they'd made it that far. Margaret told me later that Sophie cried during the vows. That Tyler's voice shook when he promised to be faithful and true. That it was small and intimate and actually rather lovely. I was glad I hadn't gone. For 6 months, Tyler and I didn't speak. He sent occasional texts, updates about his life, about his new job. He'd finally gotten a real position at a marketing firm instead of chasing get-rich-quick schemes. About the financial counseling he and Sophie were doing. I read the texts but rarely responded. I was still too angry. Still too hurt. But I was also building something new. Without the lake house, I'd needed to figure out what home meant. And I realized that for my entire adult life, I'd been chasing the idea of permanence. A house. A legacy. Something that would outlast me. But permanence is an illusion. Everything can be taken away. Everything can be sold, lost, destroyed. What matters is what you build inside yourself. The resilience. The knowledge that you can survive loss and still stand up the next morning. I bought a small cabin in Montana. Nothing like the lake house. Smaller, simpler. But it's mine. Only mine. No co-owners. No one who can take it from me. and I started painting. Something I hadn't done since I was young, since before Tyler was born. Abstract pieces that don't make sense to anyone but me. Splashes of color representing all the emotions I'd been too busy to feel for 30 years. It was in that cabin, painting on a Thursday afternoon, when Tyler showed up. I hadn't heard his car on the gravel road. Didn't know he was there until I heard his knock on the door. When I opened it, I barely recognized him. He was thinner. Harder somehow. There were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there before. "How did you find this place?" I asked. "Margaret. I told her I needed to see you and I'd drive anywhere." "It's a 6-hour drive from Ann Arbor." "I know. I've been driving since 4 this morning." I stepped aside and let him in. The cabin was small, just one main room with a loft bedroom, a kitchen area, a wood stove. My paintings covered the walls, propped against furniture, some still drying on easels. Tyler looked around slowly, taking it all in. "You're painting again?" "I am. I didn't know you'd ever painted before." "You don't know a lot of things about me, Tyler. Just like I apparently didn't know a lot of things about you." He flinched but didn't argue. "Can we sit?" We sat at the small kitchen table. I made coffee, the automatic hospitality of a mother, and we held the mugs without drinking, letting the warmth seep into our hands. "I've been in therapy," he said finally. Sophie insisted. After everything fell apart, she said we either got help or she was leaving. And it's been hard. Really hard. Facing all the stuff I've been avoiding. Like what? Like how angry I've been at you my whole life. For working so much. For not being there. And how I channeled that anger into trying to prove I could be successful without working as hard as you did. Like I could take shortcuts and still win, just to show you it was possible. He stared into his coffee. "The therapist said I was trying to outdo you and punish you at the same time. That selling the house was this twisted way of taking something from you the way I felt like work had taken you from me." I felt something in my chest tighten. "Tyler. Let me finish. Please." He looked up at me, and his eyes were red. "I've spent the last 6 months working. Really working. Not gambling, not day trading, not looking for the easy way. Just working. I'm doing marketing for a small firm, and it's boring as hell, but I'm good at it. Sophie's working too. She gave up the Instagram influencer thing and got a job at an art gallery. We're paying down my debt. We're living in a 1-bedroom apartment that's about a quarter the size of the old place. We sold the car I loved. We eat ramen twice a week." "That's good, Tyler. That's what you needed to do." "And I hate it," he said, and he started crying. "I hate every second of it. I hate budgeting and meal planning and saying no to things. I hate watching our friends go out while we stay home. I hate that Sophie looks at me sometimes like she's disappointed, even though she tries to hide it. I hate that I destroyed everything trying to take a shortcut." I reached across the table and took his hand. It was automatic. Maternal. Even after everything, he was still my son. "But you're doing it," I said. "You're doing the hard thing. That's what matters." "Is it enough? Will it ever be enough to fix what I did?" "I don't know. But it's a start." We sat there for a long time, holding hands across the table, not saying anything. Outside, the Montana wind moved through the pine trees, and I could hear the creek that ran behind the cabin, constant and unchanging. "The trust fund," Tyler said eventually. "I'm not asking you to unfreeze it. I'm asking you to give it to charity. All of it." I stared at him. "What?" "I don't deserve it. I don't trust myself with it. And every time I think about it sitting there, frozen, I feel like it's this thing hanging over me. This reminder of everything I did wrong. So give it away. To a scholarship fund or something. Something that'll help someone who actually deserves it." "Tyler, that's $85,000. "I know. And I threw away $400,000. So what's another 85? At least this way something good comes from it." I studied his face, looking for the angle. The manipulation. But all I saw was exhaustion and sincerity and something that looked like genuine remorse. What does Sophie think about this? She's the one who suggested it. She said we need to prove to ourselves that we can build our own life without your safety net. That we can't start healing until we stop counting on money we haven't earned. Maybe Sophie had learned something too. I'll think about it, I said. That's all I'm asking. Tyler stayed for dinner. We cooked together in the small kitchen. Pasta with vegetables, nothing fancy. We ate on the porch, watching the sun set over the mountains, and we talked about small things. His work. Sophie's gallery. Margaret's new cat. Nothing about the lake house. Nothing about betrayal or revenge or frozen trust funds. Just a mother and son, sharing a meal. Like we used to, before everything got complicated. When he left, just before he got in his car, he turned back. Mom? I'm sorry. I know I've said it before, but I mean it this time. I'm sorry for what I did. I'm sorry for what I took from you. And I'm sorry it took losing everything for me to understand what you were trying to teach me all along. What was I trying to teach you? That anything worth having is worth working for. That there are no shortcuts. That integrity matters more than success. He smiled, sad and small. I just wish I'd learned it before I destroyed the one place that meant everything to you. Tyler, the lake house wasn't what meant everything to me. You were. You still are. I'm just trying to figure out how to reconcile the son I thought I raised with the man who sold my home. I'm trying to figure that out too, he said. After he left, I went back to my painting. But I couldn't focus. I kept thinking about what he'd said. About the trust fund. About charity. About starting over without a safety net. And I realized something. Tyler was finally doing what I'd done at his age. Figuring out who he was without anything to fall back on. Learning to build from nothing. It was the hardest lesson I'd ever learned, and watching him learn it now was both painful and necessary. 3 days later, I called my lawyer, David, about Tyler's trust fund. I want to set up a scholarship. 4 first-generation college students. Full ride. 4 years. Use the trust fund as the seed money. That's a wonderful idea, Catherine. Does Tyler know? It was his idea, actually. Well, that's good growth. Yes, I agreed. It is. The scholarship launched 6 months later. The Catherine and Tyler Brennan Foundation for First-Generation Scholars. I insisted on both our names. Not because Tyler had earned it, but because I wanted him to see that legacy isn't about what you take. It's about what you build together, even after everything's been broken. Tyler and Sophie came to the first scholarship award ceremony. We gave out 2 full scholarships that year. One to a girl from Detroit who wanted to study engineering, another to a boy from rural Montana who was the first in his family to graduate high school, let alone attend college. I watched Tyler shake their hands, saw the way his face changed when the Montana kid talked about working 3 jobs to save for college, about his parents who cleaned offices at night to help him. I saw Tyler see himself, not who he'd been, but who he could have been if things had been different. If he'd had to struggle the way I had. After the ceremony, the 3 of us had dinner. It was awkward at first, too many unspoken things hovering between us. But Sophie, surprisingly, was the one who broke the tension. Catherine, I owe you an apology. A real one. She put down her fork and looked at me directly. What I said that day, about you needing our guest room, it was cruel. It was petty. And it came from this place of, I don't know, insecurity. Jealousy, maybe. You'd built this incredible life, and I felt like I was always in your shadow. Like Tyler was always comparing me to you and I was coming up short. Were you? I asked Tyler. He had the grace to look ashamed. Sometimes. Yeah. I think I wanted Sophie to be like you, driven, successful, ambitious. But I also resented those same qualities in you. I was a mess, Mom. I'm still kind of a mess. We're all messes, I said. Some of us just hide it better than others. Sophie laughed, a little watery. We're not hiding it well at all anymore. Good, I said. Hiding things is what got us here. We talked for hours that night. Really talked. About Tyler's childhood, about my choices, about the lake house and what it had meant to each of us. Tyler cried again. He seemed to cry a lot now, which was actually progress from the emotionally closed-off person he'd been. Sophie held his hand and didn't try to fix it, just let him feel it. And I told them something I'd never said out loud before. I bought the lake house the same week your father called to tell me he was remarrying. Did you know that, Tyler? He shook his head. He'd been gone for 10 years by then. You were almost 17. And he called to tell me he'd found someone new, someone better, someone who made him happier than I ever had. And I was destroyed. Because even after 10 years, even after building my business and raising you and proving I didn't need him, some part of me still wanted him to regret leaving, still wanted him to see what he'd missed. Mom, I had no idea. I bought the lake house to prove something. To him. To myself. To anyone who'd ever doubted me. I bought it to say, look at what I built without you. It was never just about having a vacation home. It was about having proof that I'd won. I smiled, sad and old. So when you sold it, Tyler, you didn't just take my sanctuary. You took my trophy. My evidence that I'd survived being left. That I'd thrived, even. The table was quiet. But here's what I've figured out in the last year, I continued. I didn't need that house to prove anything. The life I built, the son I raised, the company I created, those are the real proof. And they can't be sold or taken away or lost. They just are. Even after what I did. Tyler asked. I'm still proof that you did something right? Especially after what you did. Because you could have stayed the person who sold his mother's house and never looked back. You could have blamed me, justified it, rationalized it. But you didn't. You faced what you'd done. You're doing the work to fix it. That's not weakness, Tyler. That's strength. And I think maybe you got that from me. He got up from the table and hugged me. Really hugged me, not the performative hugs we'd exchanged at holidays and birthdays, but the kind of hug where you're holding on because you need to be held. Sophie joined us, and for a moment we were just three imperfect people who'd hurt each other and were trying to find their way back. If you've stayed with me this whole story, I want you to know something. Revenge isn't what they show you in movies. It's not clean or satisfying or final. I froze Tyler's trust fund thinking it would teach him a lesson, thinking it would make him understand what he'd taken from me. And maybe it did. But it also taught me something. You can't punish people into being better. You can only create circumstances where they have to choose who they want to be. And then you have to wait. And hope. And let go of the outcome. 2 years have passed since Tyler sold the lake house. He and Sophie are still together. They're still working, still paying off debt, still living in that small apartment. But they're building something. Slowly. The way things should be built. Tyler calls me every week now. Not to ask for anything, just to talk. To tell me about his day. To ask my advice, which he sometimes even takes. To rebuild what we lost, one conversation at a time. I still have the Montana cabin. I still paint. I still run my company, though I've started delegating more, spending less time in boardrooms and more time in places that make me happy. I'm 65 now. Retirement isn't far off. And I'm starting to think about what I want my legacy to be. Not a lake house. Not a company. Not money or property or things that can be taken. I want my legacy to be resilience. The kind that bends but doesn't break. The kind that survives betrayal and finds a way to forgive. The kind that builds scholarships from broken trust funds and second chances from ashes. The lake house is gone. I drive past it sometimes when I'm in Michigan visiting Margaret. New owners, young family with kids. They've painted it a different color, added a new dock. They don't know the history. They don't know about the woman who bought it to prove she'd survived, or the son who sold it and then learned what survival really means. And that's okay. That house was never really mine. It was just a place I loved for a while. What I have now, this hard-won peace, this careful rebuild of my relationship with my son, this knowledge that I can lose everything and still be myself, that's mine. No one can sell it. No one can take it. The 6 words I whispered to Sophie that day, Tyler's broke, and so are you, they weren't just revenge. They were truth. The kind of truth that destroys illusions and forces people to face reality. Was it kind? No. Was it necessary? I think so. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is tell someone the truth they're running from, even if it hurts. Especially if it hurts. Sophie thanked me for it last month, believe it or not. We had coffee, just the 2 of us. She said that moment, as horrible as it was the moment she stopped living in fantasy. Stopped believing that money and lifestyle and Instagram perfection mattered more than honest work and genuine connection. You were cruel, she said. But you were right. And I needed to hear it, even though I hated you for months afterward. Do you still hate me? I asked. No. Now I kind of want to be you when I grow up. We laughed. It was the first time I'd laughed with her, really laughed, without guardedness or tension. Maybe that's the real ending to this story. Not revenge. Not punishment. Not even justice. Just this, 3 flawed people who hurt each other, who chose to do the hard work of rebuilding, who learned that love is more complicated than we pretend it is. The Scholarship Foundation is thriving. We've funded 12 students so far. Tyler volunteers with them, mentors them, helps them navigate financial aid and career planning. He's good at it. Turns out, all that time he spent making financial mistakes taught him exactly what not to do. And me? I'm learning to let go. Of control. Of anger. Of the need to fix everything. I'm learning that sometimes the best thing you can do for someone you love is step back and let them figure it out. But I'll never forget the lake house. The way the light looked on the water in the morning. The sound of loons. The feeling of having built something beautiful with my own hands. I'll never forget the day I lost it either. The betrayal. The rage. The cold calculation of planning revenge. Both of those things are part of me now. The builder and the destroyer. The mother and the adversary. The woman who forgives and the woman who never forgets. That's what 65 years on this earth teaches you. You contain multitudes. You can love someone and set boundaries with them. You can forgive them and still protect yourself. You can build a legacy that includes your failures as much as your successes. If you've made it to the end of this story, thank you for listening. Thank you for staying with me through the ugly parts and the uncertain parts and the parts where I wasn't sure I was doing the right thing. Check the description box below for more stories like this one. Stories about betrayal and revenge and the messy, complicated work of being human. Stories about people who refused to stay victims, who got back up after being knocked down, who learned that survival isn't pretty but it's always worth it. Comment below and tell me, have you ever had to choose between revenge and forgiveness? What did you choose? What did it cost you? What did it teach you? I'm still learning the answers to those questions myself. Maybe I always will be. But I know this much, the lake house is gone, but I'm still here. Tyler's still here. We're still building. Still trying. Still learning. And sometimes, that's the best revenge of all. Not destruction, but survival. Not punishment, but growth. Not making them pay, but making them see. Making them see what they almost lost. What they still have a chance to build. What forgiveness looks like when it's hard-won and genuine and costs you everything you thought you knew about love. That's my story. That's my truth. That's the legacy I'm building now, not in property or money, but in the space between betrayal and reconciliation, between anger and understanding, between the mother I was and the woman I'm becoming. The lake house is gone. But I'm not. And that, in the end, is all that matters. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey. If this story moved you, made you angry, made you think or made you feel, please hit that subscribe button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And most importantly, check the description below for more stories about real people facing impossible choices and finding their way through. We're not alone in our pain. We're not alone in our mistakes. We're not alone in the hard, messy work of being human. See you in the next story.